Last time on Kerbal Space Program. Because you people have demanded that I murder Jeb in cold blood. I knew I should have never trusted his life to you. He pleads the Kerbals of the space program not to allow what's going to happen to him to stop them. For them to carry his dream of exploring. His transmission cuts off into static when he hits the water. And we all know Jeb is truly gone. The only person who would possibly ever think to switch a space capsule for an aircraft cockpit simply for price reasons would be a bureaucrat. As the mission timer hits 18 minutes and 45 seconds, we hit bottom. And there it is. We are now landed in the water. Knowing that eventually the space program will have to actually resume launching after losing Jeb, Valentina sits down and picks the next program. This really shouldn't be her job, but seeing as how Werner's busy with his JKMS, whatever that is, and the bureaucrat is over at the bottom of the sea, and Bill is off toying with something called a launch escape system, Val really doesn't have an alternative besides designing something for herself. Now, there are several contracts that could be completed here. But, interestingly enough, one of the highest paying is to test the Klimov VK-1 jet engine. And of course another is to test this parachute at the appropriate altitude. Now, both of these are very highly paying. Both of these are something that I have not yet been able to complete. And, interestingly, in order to appropriately send Jeb off, I had to research the Mark I's aircraft cockpit, which came along with the actual parts required to make a jet engine serviceable. So, let's try our hand at doing that. In order to accomplish both of these contracts, what we have to do is get the Klimov up to at least 1,000 meters at some sort of speed. We can do this pretty easily in a plane. In order to get this, we have to get pretty high. And I don't think the Klimov can actually reach that sort of altitude. So we're going to need some sort of rocket engine. And I'm thinking we can do one of these tests in the middle, either the swivel test or the thud test. Both of them do require us to be pretty far up though, but let's test the swivel. So for that, in keeping with our new and improved actually have some sort of safety in place requirements, I'm going to add a decoupler, and we can just fast forward a little bit through this build cycle. And here we have basically the core idea of what I'm going for. This is going to be a plane. Revolutionary idea, I know. The basic concept is going to be that we're going to fly the Klimov up to its service ceiling. Then we're going to pull up into a climb and ignite the swivel. The swivel will take us up to, with any luck, 26,000 meters at 800 meters per second. And once it's there, we can test the swivel and then do a powered descent on the way back down to get to 15,000 meters at 80 meters per second or so. And we can test one of these parachutes. I'm going to mount two of them on here. This time we're going to make sure that, unlike what happened to Jeb, the escape hatch is actually unobstructed if we release this decoupler. However, assuming I can be allowed to edit this, oh, I can't, hang on. Because of silly reasons, I have to edit parachutes over here in the vehicle assembly building. Because I do not have action groups unlocked in the spaceplane hangar. So we're going to make sure for all of these parachutes that they are set up such that they deploy appropriately and they can land the entire craft. I am going to add more. I'm going to try to recover the entire plane. I'm not confident in my ability to land this back on a runway though. So we're going to be trying to recover the plane on actual parachutes, which kind of defeats the purpose of a plane if you start thinking too much about it, so don't. And anyway, this is going to be kind of an interesting looking plane. Since we can't really have a proper empennage, a proper tailplane, we have to kind of resolve for something like this. We are essentially going to have this small vertical stabilizer, these two, maybe a bigger vertical stab, actually. Maybe just the, yeah, Delta Deluxe. This will do. Use a Delta Deluxe for a vertical stabilizer and rudder. It doesn't get to affect anything besides yaw. Then these guys are going to be our elevators. They don't get to affect roll or yaw, but they get to affect pitch. And then we need some sort of aileron, which will go here. And it's always a challenge to figure out how to appropriately mount these. There we go. This controls our roll. And somehow this is looking really stupid, but it might actually work. For the record, I said the word might. Since I'm pretty confident it won't, of course, I'm just going to add in a few of these reaction wheels. After all, real planes wouldn't get to have these, but I do. Okay. Since I'm designing a plane, I'm over the limit on parts. I'll deal with that situation. Since I'm building a plane, we have to actually deal with things like stability. So we're going to use this wonderful aerodynamic tool to show us what happens as the plane's nose moves. And I don't need to explain all of this. Some people might actually understand coefficient of lift, drag, coefficient of moment, lift to drag ratio, but basically what we're looking for is that this yellow line goes down. What that means is that as the plane's nose gets further and further away from pointing forward, there will be an increasing amount of force trying to drive the nose back to pointing forward. Which in other words means this plane is stable. Which is a wonderful quality for a plane to have, as I'm sure any pilot would tell you. Now, we need to put in some landing gear. Landing gear in Kerbal Space Program is kind of finicky. We need to make sure that it actually has the same position. It needs to be pointed straight down or else the collider can get kind of weird. So what I'm going to do is mount them there, and then I'm going to try to adjust these. I'm going to have 3 sets of landing gear on this. So one of them is going to be up front. This one's going to sit right at the center of mass. Then I'm going to have a third one that sits back here. Kind of eyeballing that these are equally spaced, but the one at the center of mass should keep me from being floppy. In reality, I really shouldn't need to have this middle landing gear. I should be able to go with a tricycle gear, but I do not trust my ability to properly design aircraft. And there we go. Now that we have this, I'm going to set it up with a few more parachutes to recover something like appropriately. If I can figure out what orientation will actually lead to this parachute being in a good place. Okay, whatever. Don't know why I didn't just start out doing this. And it's gone. Okay. Whatever. These parachutes also exist now. And I'm going to have to go back into the VAB and set these parachutes up correctly. If I remember to press this button. There we go. Can I move these while I'm at it? Yes. Alright. There we go. And now we have recovery parachutes. While we're here, we're going to set up some abort action. If we press abort, all of these parachutes will be immediately deployed. The engines will be shut down. If I can find the shutdown button. And we're going to decouple this, because I am much more confident in our ability to land this cockpit than our ability to land the rest. And actually I'm going to use a little bit of a cheap trick, you could say, here, and change this AutoCAD speed to be really low. Only on the cockpit. What this achieves is that if we're not coming in at a good angle, and we fall over, the parachutes will remain attached until we've already finished falling over. Which hopefully means that we don't explode, which seems kind of nice. And now that we've done that, back over here, we are 11 parts too high. I don't really care to fix that at the moment, so we're going to have to upgrade something. But first, Tina's search. I will have to start coming up with better names for things in the near future. But so far, I haven't. Unless, of course, you count Jeremiah Kerman Correctional Facility. In order to do this properly, we have to update the spaceplane hangar. We don't quite have the money for that yet, which is kind of a shame. So we might have to do a little bit of contract grinding first. That leads me to the idea of testing the Mark 55 Thud. I don't really want to do this test CR2 Vesuvius contract yet because the Vesuvius is an excellent engine that I don't think I have the technology for at the moment. And of course, that will help us in our project to get to orbit. Of course, I could do the project to get to orbit right now. But I don't want to, because it seems kind of stupid for our first mission after killing a Kerbal, not counting exiling one, to be trying to send one to orbit for the first time. We need to do something different in the meanwhile. Though. Why can I not see the Vesuvius? That's not a good thing. Maybe I won't even be able to do that, or the Thud. Wonderful. Okay. So it appears that the game has glitched, and rendered my contracts impossible. Which is wonderful. Vesuvius is here, so we could actually just unlock it. The Thud is also there. Alright, I'm gonna just grab that. And now we get money. By the way, I didn't highlight this appropriately before, but we actually got paid quite a lot of money, and science, for doing the whole Jeremiah bottom of the sea thing. Namely, we got paid 50,000 funds for breaking all of those records, and we got 24 science for all of our research. And we didn't pay anything for the correctional facility or the launcher because, of course, the mutineers stole everything. The space program can't pay for it because it wasn't us who bought it. The mutineers don't pay for anything because they stole it. Really, it's the perfect crime. Val is probably seriously thinking about stealing her spacecraft right now, but hey. So, this time our wonderful plan is to send up a test craft. This will be a one-off launch, so I'm not going to save it anywhere. But, in keeping with our new plans, we have to keep a launch escape system. This wonderful little tower is a system that will use solid rockets to blow off the capsule and carry it off into Never Never Land, essentially, in the effort to prevent the capsule from being consumed in an explosion. I believe it also comes with an ejection system so that after it does this, it can detach. Or, if it merely was not needed, rather. Because we're putting this on top, we now have to do the thing that I was complaining about last time and actually mount our parachutes on the sides. That's fine though, right? And of course, because we're trying to do crew safety now, we have to mount 2 sets of parachutes, right? Because we don't want to snap our pilots' necks. So, our outer parachutes are drogues. The point of the drogues is to make sure that the spacecraft is traveling slow enough to deploy the real parachutes, the mains. The main parachutes will slow us down a lot more, but they are not nearly as tough. So the drogues slow it down. And as a bonus, the drogues hopefully keep G-forces to something akin to a minimum. You saw this happen in the Jeremiah Kerman correctional facility. However, because it's a correctional facility, we didn't really care that much about the G-forces, and we set the main parachutes to deploy really quickly. This may or may not have something to do with the fact that while testing, I had a bad habit of forgetting to actually arm the parachutes until right before the sea surface, and needed to set the parachutes to expand rather quickly to avoid blowing up on camera. Anyway, now that we have this will form the core of our abort system. And before we continue further with that, our mission is going to simply be go up, test the thud, voila. The thud needs to be tested at an altitude of 36 kilometers and 460 meters per second, which is brilliant. So I can do something like this. And that will allow us to test the thud. And it'll give us a little bit of delta V. I mean, the thud is fantastic. I want to control the thrust-weight ratio to avoid exposing our pilots to 6 Gs. That is generally considered bad in the spaceflight community. And of course, we need some sort of thing to get us that high. And I'm actually going to use a thumper for that. It's a little bit pricier than a hammer, but we kind of need the performance. And of course, I'm going to use the decaying thrust profile, and I'm going to drop the thrust-weight ratio way down again. Because, once again, 8 TWR is bad. Revolutionary, I know. I'm going to drop this until the maximum thrust-weight ratio is exactly 3. I'm not really sure if Kerbal Engineer is accurate to the thrust curve of the SRBs, because that is modded, but who knows. Anyway, we're going to hope that this is enough to get us to our speed and altitude requirements, because this is a rather cheap spacecraft. And in keeping with our abort requirements, yes, that will abort. The same time as this abort, we will deploy both sets of parachutes. We will decouple this, and we will shut down these engines. I cannot actually shut down the SRB, so it is better to leave everything attached if we abort during that phase of flight. Will this be enough? Probably not. I might need to add a another liquid engine stage, but we'll see. Actually, since we're going straight up, it might be better to launch this from boomerang. Oh, come on. Ha. Launchpad appears to suck. Uh... Means... Please hold while I carefully adjust this to give us the most amount of fuel we can actually put on the pad. Yes, this is ready to go. Should stage that there. And let's give this a try. Val has of course done this with absolutely no supervision, so we'll see how this goes. Maybe this will all just flip over because she didn't consider aerodynamics in the slightest while designing the spacecraft. Can I still call it a spacecraft? I don't know. Do you care? I hope not. Anyway, with very little fanfare, the first launch of a science vessel after Jeremiah's correctional facility slips off into the sky. To make sure I have this available, and we're just going to see how far this can take us. Thanks to the declining thrust profile, it's actually a pretty sedate launch. You can see the thrust-to-weight ratio is being held not that far away from 1.5, so I really didn't need to be worried about it hitting 3, and maybe I should have even increased the thrust a little bit from here. But this means we suffer pretty much zero drag. And as long as this remains over 1.0, I think we're probably fine. If we're close on getting the thud to the right place, I might bump it up a little bit, but for the moment, I'm alright with where we are. And you can see now the thrust is actually increasing. Even though the rated thrust is decreasing slowly, we are gaining a specific impulse from the fact that we're, well, far away from the ground, and therefore in thinner air. We're also presumably experiencing less drag, but considering how high we are and how slow we are, that doesn't really seem like much of a factor, does it? Now, we are going to make it up high enough. I want to know if we're going to be moving fast enough. So we're going to have to keep an eye on our velocity, but I think we can manage it with some judicious use of the thumb. And now we can run the test. Excuse me, said. You bastard. Okay, we'll run the test on the way down, damn it. But we're going to eject the launch escape system and watch as it drifts on off into the darkness, or wherever the hell it ends up going. I think it actually does have an offset solid motor, so it's going to have gone off in one direction or the other, either east or west. I'm not sure which it picks. But it's probably going to leave physics range by the time we come back to it. You know, on second thought, this actually does seem like a good opportunity to try to do an EVA report. Since we're so high up, we don't really need to control anything, and we can just get out, board, and come back. And of course, re-enable EVA, or SAS. And so we have a little bit of science to take home. We still have quite a lot of fuel, so I'm pretty confident I can manage our speed appropriately. We're going to be going pretty fast on our way down. So I'm just going to pin this so I can click run test whenever I want. And I'm going to make sure our speed doesn't exceed 540 on our way down. I do have a pretty limited window, but looking at our speed, I think we're going to exceed 460. Yes. Yes, we are. And now I can complete the contract. Brilliant. I'm actually going to try to land this back on the nozzles in order to save a very slight amount of money. Primarily, I have a lot of fuel left, and I think the parachutes in combination with the fuel can handle it. Plus, I can always use the decoupler. Yes, the safety guys would probably be upset about this decision, but who cares about them, right? Anyway, I'm going to arm the parachutes and wait for them to deploy. Of course, I did adjust them this time to deploy at the right altitude because I actually do want Valentina to survive. And that explodes. Presumably, the stress of the atmosphere has broken that apart because I am using Ferrum Aerospace. Darn it. I really should have been using power to slow us down. Oh well. It's not like this rocket was all that expensive anyway, right? We get to listen to parts explode in the distance and enable physics warp to get down faster, because I have absolutely zero patience for parachutes. We can see the bug that parachutes don't actually have colliders, so they can overlap with each other. If this happened in real life, I remind you, this would be very bad. Of course, these parachutes are way overkill because I set them up for appropriate weight for the entire stack, because I am stupid. So let's just cut ahead to the part where we're landing this thing. And so, carrying a capsule full of science, Valentina gracefully drops down to the surface, having finally completed a mission without Jeb. Of course, she has done this before, but the space program can now be a little bit more safe knowing that she is around. Having done this, we have earned a little bit of science, covered some funds, and most notably, we are closer to our goal of upgrading the spaceplane hangar. Test the prop fan. I don't really want to do that. Hell, no. Your sector P8Q. See, we could use our brand new plane to actually run some tests. So I could conceivably do so. However, it is over here on the other side of the planet. Of course, I could design an aircraft to go there, but I don't want to. Actually, I don't know the range of the spacecraft Valentina has designed, but I don't really want to find out by not being able to make it here. Haul this guy into flight. Brilliant. Both of these can work fairly easily. So I'm just going to grab... One of these is actually lower. Just going to grab that one and fly it. For this, we're going to basically reuse the same vessel. We are not really going far in any sense of the word. 2,000 meters, 190 meters per second is fairly sedate. I'll add more fuel just for the hell of it, but mainly with the use of our handy swivel engine, we'll make it there just fine. And we need to haul the drogue chute into flight there. Notably, we don't actually have to test it. That is wonderful. By any chance, are these legs long enough to... No? Okay. Fair enough. So, let's fly it. I think I actually have a contract to test something at the launch site. I really should have done that. And I don't mean the Vesuvius. I think that I have a contract to test a decoupler or something. I don't know. It's been a really long time since I've actually recorded for episode 5. And for recording episode 6, I was mucking about and doing all sorts of things to make the episode entertaining, since it wasn't real progression. So I don't really remember what I was doing. And I have to relearn all of that right next to you guys. I need to make sure that's there. I didn't remember to set this up in the abort sequence, but it's fine. It'll be fine. Alright. I'm just going to monitor our altitude and speed. Make sure that we can manage to get up to the appropriate altitude. I'm still going to try to recover the whole stack if possible. But with this large window, I'm sure this is manageable. And actually, I might try to recover the launch abort system too. That'd be interesting. And there we go. We have officially done a contract. Yay. Can you believe we get paid for this crap? I really shouldn't deploy these while we're going up, of course, but this will help us get down faster. And since you guys don't want to watch this thing going up forever, that's a benefit. So with some time acceleration, we can watch this descend, continue to descend. This time, without as much energy, we don't actually break up. And that's a massive boon, isn't it? Descending more. Yeah, I'm gonna need to start resetting these parachutes to not think that they're the only things holding the vehicle up. That's fine when the whole thing is really heavy and the parachutes can't handle it individually, but right now each parachute thinks that it's the only one on the entire spacecraft. Which makes for some really slow descending, since these drogue chutes can slow us down to 8.5 meters per second entirely without the mains. Now that the mains are out, we're going to slow down even more, and when they inflate, in just a moment, even under time acceleration, yeah, we slow down to below 6 meters per second, which is actually a good landing speed. But it would be nice if we didn't have to watch that from all the way up at 2,500 meters. And once again, our brave pilot, Valentina, is about to complete a mission without Jeb. It's amazing how easy this is, isn't it? The space program can hope that Valentina will be as good as Jeb when it gets to, real missions that aren't just farming money. And of course, the first ever flight of a plane on Kerbal, for some reason. Since these people get to space before they develop, aircraft. How does that make sense, you ask? Well, they're Kerbals. That's how. Another contract done. Ah, yes, we need to test. I'm just going to do this hauling mission first. It's not difficult. I think we can actually just do the exact same launch profile. But before we do that, I'm going to actually remember to read my contract and see... Yes, I am supposed to test the TD-25. Landed. And while I'm at it, we'll reset all of these to be appropriate. I'm not gonna fix the parachutes. I'll complain about it all over again, but who cares? You guys won't need to see that because in editing, I have the power of accelerating time beyond the limits of physics, or of just cutting. We'll see which one I have chosen. Once again, it's essentially the same mission, except this time we decouple on the launch site and get paid almost 5,000 pesos for it. Isn't that wonderful? Since we haven't changed the mass of this and our requirements are pretty close to the same, I am fairly confident we can just do the same mission profile. Which is to say, I sit here, don't touch the controls while SAS holds us nose up. We just watch this thing fly at full throttle into the sky. Isn't that lovely? Although actually I need to cut down the throttle here to make sure that we... Do I not have the part? Damn it. Damn it, Ryan. I used the real chute parachute instead of the Mark II-R. So we don't get to have this completed. We have to launch again because I'm stupid. This is the content you guys come here for, right? And we just time accelerate our way back down anyway. So we're going to have to fly this all over again. But that's alright because now we can do a different contract at the same time. Naturally, it kind of sucks that we have to grind all of this out. We all know that we're going to just fly this over and over again. So if I had slightly less personal integrity, I might actually just use the cheats menu and grant myself money. Unfortunately for you, I don't intend to do that. So we're going to do two little... Oh, I can only do the one. Right, because I did it wrong. Yep. My bad. Okay, we're going to do one mission at the same time as actually using the right parachutes. I think 2 more cycles of this and we should be ready to put our plane on the pad. Of course, 1 more cycle is probably enough, but I don't want to spend so much money on that I don't have any more for the space program. Of course, I could use the cheats menu to rescue myself from that too, but I don't want to. So what is my mission? I have to test the small landing gear. Ah yes, the one that's retractable and therefore that I should be using on the spaceplane. Whoops. Okay, well, we'll just have to remember to test that. And this time I'm going to remember to mount the correct parachute, instead of being a fool. You know what? Let's set that to go off really low to the ground so we don't have to watch it as long. Isn't that intelligent? And let's go again. Alright, this time we run a test on these landing gear. Test reports the landing gear are there. We have made a small amount of money, and so we can go off on our hauling program all over again. Just like last time, I probably need to cut the speed while we're getting close to 3 kilometers. This engine is set to slightly more throttle than I need, but after all, I would rather get there faster. Wouldn't you? And actually, I'm going to try something entirely different and cut out the throttle when we reach about 5 kilometers apogee. The idea here is essentially to coast to our end. Oh, and I unlock it early anyway. So we're going to release the parachute. The idea was essentially that instead of keeping the engine and hitting the high end of the speed, we try to hit the low end of the speed, which means that this all gets resolved slightly faster. Of course, you guys don't care, because I'm cutting all of this time out. Yeah, so these parachutes didn't actually deploy because I didn't bother to get the staging right, so we did a powered landing. Yay. Okay, one more launch and I think we can do this. Hopefully future episodes of this will feature considerably less grinding contracts. As after all, once we get to orbit, we can start doing something interesting, like going to space. Of course, we could do this splashdown test in the same way that we did it before. On the other hand, I figured you probably don't want to. So we're going to try to test this prop fan. So now that we have the Vesuvius, I actually want to test both of these cryogenic engines and get them out of here. The other one that I need to test is the Buzzard. Wherever it is, yes. It is experimental, so perhaps I shouldn't run this test quite yet, but it does seem to be, well, it is the right size, it's a vacuum-fueled engine, and we're not going anywhere far in space quite yet. So I'm just going to test it and get it out of the cube. And there we go. That will test both of those engines. The other thing I need to do is test this prop fan while in flight, at least 8 kilometers up. This is higher than the other ones we've run. And I need to put this thing on the side somehow. Of course, there is always a solution to this. Sometimes the solution involves some ingenuity of design. And there we go. Tell me this is not the dumbest looking thing you have ever seen in your lives. Of course, this prop fan would actually be pretty good at a variety of applications, none of which I intend to use. So hopefully this rocket can get us up far enough. I think it can, considering how close we are on... how much extra fuel we have, rather, when we do these missions. The prop fan does weigh 1 ton, which does markedly increase our weight. Yeah, and our thrust-to-weight ratio with them is a lot lower. Okay, fine. This one time will add on some fanciness. I don't have to recover those, but whatever. Oops. There we go. And just like that, we have a little bit of extra delta V. I'm actually going to, this is quite appropriately showing me interesting numbers, so we'll just do it like this. The Reliance will decouple, and then we'll ignite the swivel in the middle. Adjust the thrust-weight ratios, not that much. There we go. And we'll give this a try. This is probably more aggressive than I need to be, and we actually might be able to land this. Oh, of course. Cannot support vessels heavier than 18 tons. Lovely. So we can't have very much fuel in those at all, can we? Alright, fine. I don't know why I would save this, but that is my instinct. And we go again! First off, we would like to run these tests, but I would like to make sure that we get away first, so we're going to... Actually... No, okay. We're going to ignite these engines while we do these tests. And in fact, you know what? No, I changed my mind. Run the tests. Then we'll start the engines. And then we'll decouple. And that way that can stay there and we can make it off without tipping over and crashing as soon as we've decoupled the stack. Which is actually a risk. Now our goal is to get up to at least 8 kilometers and 130 meters per second. Which is of course not trivial. But it should be very possible. We're going to kind of do the same trick. I'm going to set the Apo key to 10 kilometers. And we're going to let ourselves naturally slow down. And there we go. Now run the test. I don't know how that's windmilling when... Actually, that is somehow windmilling even though there is no intake, which is nice. But we'll just deploy these parachutes and get along with our lives. For doing this, we have gotten some money from those tests, and quite a bit of money actually for testing these prop fans. Lovely. And of course, once again, we descend under the magic of time acceleration. This time we are quite a lot heavier, but I'm confident. There we go. Okay, so we lost one of the prop fans. That's no big deal. After all, Valentina is safe. And I think I missed a little bit of science, actually, for landing on the crawler way. Oh well. Maybe I should do one more of these missions just to pick that up. But anyway, we can now upgrade the spaceplane hangar. And now that we have done that, we can grab Val's plane, and now we can launch it because it actually has a higher part limit on the spaceplane hangar. As a bonus, we can access action groups here. This isn't that expensive, so yay. But actually what I'm going to do is add some science. I'm not really sure if we have all of these experiments from various locations, but by adding them we can find out. I'm not going to add a materials unit, it's kind of difficult to work with. But I'm going to at least add maybe 2 mystery goos, come to think of it. Like so. And this way we can do a little bit of research wherever we end up. And if we land somewhere special, we can do science there too. With the magic of parachutes on our side. And of course, Val is our pilot, and we roll her out to the runway for Kerbin's very first aircraft flight. Now that we're here, we are finally ready, but of course that will have to happen in another episode. Yes, somehow it appears that Valentina actually does survive this. That seems improbable, but hey, who can defy the will of the Kerbals? And more importantly, the physics engine of Unity. Apparently I have to test this through the staging sequence, so... Oh, yes. I also forgot that we have to stop. That's going to be inconvenient. We're getting some serious mock tuck here, but we can just about pull out and return to level flight.